My name is Bob Wilmeth, and I'm a pilot for 56 years. I started flying in 1966. I didn't know how to fly. I bought an airplane, an air coupe, for $4,900 and hired a guy to teach me. I lived in Ukaipa at the time, and I hired a guy to fly over to Redlands, and that's where I learned to fly. Now, I got 7,000 hours. I've flown all over the world. My wife flew with me. She was a lovely lady and loved to fly. That's why I married her. I was single for 5 years, and it was a second marriage. And I would take girls out, and if I thought I liked them, I would take them up flying. And if they were white knuckle, I never took them out again. Now, in 1986, I'm a Rotarian, been a Rotarian for 50 years. And they were put out a thing. Rotary has fellowships, and Rotary is bigger than the United Nations, by the way. We are everywhere. If Rotary run the world, there would never be an argument, never be a war, never be anything. It's a wonderful, wonderful organization. But anyway, I've been a Rotarian for 50 years, and they said I belong to what they call the International Fellowship of Flying Rotarians. If you're golfing, if you're a tennis player, no matter what, they have these fellowships in Rotary. So anyway, they come out through the International Fellowship of Rotarians and said, would there be anybody like to fly across the Atlantic from America to Munich, Germany? So I thought I might like to do that. And I've done a lot of long distance flying, but not over water like that. And I went home and I told my wife, said, and I expect her to say absolutely not. But when I said that, I thought maybe I might want to fly over across the Atlantic. She says, you're going to do it now. You're not getting any younger. And I was 52 at that time, and I'm 90 now. So anyway, I went back to Rotary and I said, anybody want to go along with me? One guy said, I'll go. He was single. And I couldn't take my wife because we have between us 6 children. And you don't know if you'll come back from that far. But anyway, I asked a fellow by the name of Jack Haller if he wanted to go. I asked anybody in the Rotary, I said, I'll fly you over and fly you back free if you just want to go along. And you don't have to be a pilot. Well, of course, none of them were. But Jack Haller came to me after the meeting and said, I'd like to go with you. So he did. And the agreement was that he would, once we get to Europe, we're going to stay there a month, and he buys the gas while we're doing that. Flying over and back, I'm buying all the gas and all the expense. Okay, so now I took off. First of all, I went to, I didn't have an instrument license. And I went down, took training down at LA area, Santa Monica. And I got my instrument ready 2 weeks before I left. And I was up in Chicago, and I had to put another low frequency radio in that I didn't have, that you have to go across the Atlantic. And I got talking with a guy, and I said, yeah, they were putting this radio in. I said, what do you want that for? And I said, you have to fly the Atlantic. And he said, you're going to fly the Atlantic? And I said, yeah, I just got my instrument 2 weeks ago. He said, I'll probably never see you. But, I was pretty good because I'd done all this training. And when I did get into IFR, and I got into a lot of it, I was hitting them and nailing them right on the button. And so anyway, if you leave the United States or North America for Europe, you have to leave from, if you're a single engine airplane, you have to leave from Moncton to New Brunswick, Canada. They have people there that inspect your plane and make sure that you got the equipment so that you'll live through it. So I went out to Moncton, and there was 5 airplanes all together that went, all Rotarians from all over America. I knew none of them until this time. So we went to Moncton, and the day we took off, it was raining, cold, miserable, low ceilings. And this is the first time I've really I had landed on no. It was the very, very first time I'd ever gone up, and it was thick. I mean, I was like 10,000 feet before I got on the top of it. And so I read and read. I mean, this is the first time anyway. We took off, and I had no problem. Went through, and all of a sudden we popped out on the top, 10,000, nice and sunny. I had copious gas. I had extra tanks put in. I could fly for 12 and a half hours nonstop. So we started off for a place called Baffin Island. I don't know if you know where that's at. It's up on right on the Arctic Circle. And up by Greenland, next to Greenland. And that was the first stop. I flew nonstop from Moncton, New Brunswick, Canada, all the way into a place called Frobisher Bay on Baffin Island. And a lot of the guys had to stop and get gas, but I didn't. I had lots of hours of gas when I landed. I made my first ILS takeoff that morning, my first ILS landing that afternoon. They were socked in, and I just hit it just like that though. So anyway, I was asking everybody out there, you get into icing and everything, and I'd never flown in any of that. So every pilot that I would talk with about flying, I'd ask them, what do you do if you get into icing? Because I had no de-icing equipment, all this is straight A36 Bonanza. So, and this helped me later on. So anyway, we flew up, stayed overnight, and I was tired. We were all tired. But it was a Rotary Club met us there. They knew we were coming, and they wanted to show us there's nothing to show, but it's just a miserable place. They put us on a bus, they drove us around, and it was a midnight, it never gets dark, and they kept us out till midnight, and they took us to a ridge, and then they had us sit, and it's midnight, and it's pretty light, and they said, you can look out over this, look at this. Oh, crying out loud, and there's nothing I ever looked at, and we was all tired. So anyway, we went back, and we went into the hotel, and during the night, it's raining or snowing, and they had an absolute blizzard that night. The next day we had snow about this deep, and they all were riding out. These other people had flown in this kind of weather, and I said, can I go last? And when we were getting our takeoff times, because I wanted to wait as long as I could to see what they were doing anyway. All turned out fine. And when we took off, it was about 32 degrees. It was both, there was water, but it was still snowing. And but it was melting pretty quick by that time. This was like 2 in the afternoon. I was gonna fly up to a place called Point Dyer and go the first 325 miles of ocean into Greenland. And so anyway, I took off, and Jack, the guy with me, he walked around all the time with a Pepsi in his hand. And so he couldn't drink all the time when he was, we didn't have a bathroom. And I said, no, nothing, because we'd be up there a long time. And so he didn't have this caffeine to live on. And all the time he'd get in the plane. So he was a nice guy to fly with him. And
real easy to fly with.
Yeah. And I was flying up through all this in the snowstorm, and all of a sudden I couldn't move the controls. Well, they were both wet, and I was getting up higher, and it was colder, and they were freezing. The water that was on the airplane when I took off. So anyway, I jerked it around a little bit, and it was okay. And then I flew out over the first 350 miles or 25 miles, landed at a place called Saunderston, Greenland. It's a huge American military base. Gosh, the runway was so wide, I could almost land on it crosswise. And Rotary met us there too, all the 5 planes. And we had another night of drinking, and they had a place called the Row Club. And that's all, they have nothing up there. This Row Club, they had a boat out there, a wooden boat, and they only could use it 1 month out of the year, because everything was frozen. It was on a big lake. And there was muskox there, and that was kind of an interesting place. Also, they had the muskox, they would take their cars out on the lake and chase each other on the ice, and do curlicues and all that stuff. And they had all these, they played this music, and it was all about 1930s United States. Benny Goodman and all those good old songs. And there was a couple women there, and I loved to dance. I danced with all these people. Anyway, we took off the next morning then. Now we got across over 500 miles of Greenland. Greenland is huge, our biggest island in the world. It has 12,000 feet of solid ice. The ice is so heavy, it has depressed the Earth's crust. And actually, if they were to melt it all off and take the water out, it's below sea level in the whole interior of that island. The only thing that sticks up is the mountains around the edge. So they put me in at 15,000, and I had oxygen. And so I was flying along at 15,000. It is beautiful, but it is nothing. It's just snow. It's zero. No other color. And during World War II, there were quite a few, maybe 8 to 10 airplanes that went in. One time, a whole flight of planes went in, and they landed, and they didn't know they were landing. It was a whiteout, and it's so even, and didn't hurt the planes or anything. Of course, you could never get them out of there. And P-38 is right now to this day, and they call it, anyway, they dug it out, they dug a tunnel down, they cut it all to pieces. Over the years, it was from World War II till a few years ago. Well, the guy that did it is at this airport. He passed away a few years ago. He's the one that did it. The P-38 that they cut up and took out and brought it up through that tunnel and put it back together, flew it away. It was perfect. It had landed on a whiteout, and they didn't know they were, well, you just didn't see anything. But anyway, then I had no gear. In those days, we didn't have GPS or Omnis. They had here, but they didn't have them up there. And no VORs or anything. And I took off, and 500 miles I had to fly to the other side, and there was a little inlet there. And I made that right on the money. When we got to the other side, I didn't know, all I did was look at the sun, and as the sun worked its way across, I just kind of crept a little bit. I came out the other side, right on that. It was 500 miles of, yeah, and there's nothing up there. It's just, in fact, if you go there, one of the things that you have to take is little Bunsen burners or things that take your own heat, because if you go down, there's no wood. It's just, anyway. We went 500 miles across. I was right over the top of that place. Oh, and by the way, we looked for a wrecked airplane. They said he went down about 3 weeks before we got there. And nobody ever heard it. They said, if you see it, let us know. I never saw it, and I did watch. And then we got on the other side of Greenland, and then it was 460 miles, I believe, into Reykjavik, Iceland. So then we just kept going right on into Iceland, no problem at all. Nothing to see where you are, like mechanically though, or electronically. It was all dead reckoning. I flew in there and landed. We all got together there. Now, a plane come up beside me, A36 like mine, and these two Germans got out of it, and they tied down right next to me. And I started talking to them, and they had come to America and bought this A36, and they were flying it back to Germany. They were both about 45 years old, real nice looking guys, and real nice people. They wouldn't know all I could tell them about an A36. And an A36 man, I'll tell you, the greatest airplane on earth. And so anyway, we got friendly, and then right there, walking distance, is the hotel. So we went into the hotel, we ate, and when we went up, went to sleep, got up the next morning. Now we had 628 miles of water. This was the most water I've covered, going into the Hebrides, the outer Hebrides of Scotland, and pretty much straight south, a little bit to that. And so anyway, all 5 of us took off the next day. I was in and out of cloud, but nothing, no problems of any kind. We were going to land at a town called, it evades me at the moment. It was as clear as it is out here right now. But somebody up front, I was about the third one back in the bunch. Somebody up front said, why don't we go on into Glasgow and have a big party? That means we made it. No, nobody, we didn't lose anybody. So we did, and man, did we party. And, but going in there, the weather got worse and worse and worse. And now this is like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It was dark in Glasgow, the clouds were so thick and so dense that there was no light. So about 50, 60 miles out, they picked me up and they started vectoring me in. And they're, by the way, the best in the world. But of course, their weather, it's abominable weather, so they would get very well, or good at their job. I'm talking about the people in the tower. Anyway, they talked me in and they give me all the stuff. So I went out, run around, come around, made the final. I come out of the bottom almost at minimums. And when you come out at the bottom of the clouds, and those of you who've flown high, you know it's smooth on the top, but on the bottom it's almost like this. And you see and then you don't see, and then you see and you don't see. And I'll never forget Glasgow, Scotland though. Those lights they had there were so bright and everything lit up like a Christmas tree. And one of the guys took a picture of it, and I have it at home. And it looks like a big Christmas tree down there in the dark with all the lighting they had. So anyway, we all went out and had a big party that night, and nobody got killed. And I went to bed then, and about 3 in the morning, of course I'm hungover too because I drank a lot of beer, and we all did. And phone rang. So I got up to answer the phone, and so I got up to answer the phone, and a guy with a real heavy brogue. Of course, he would have a Scottish brogue because he's in Scotland. But he said, is this Mr. Robert Wilmeth? I said, yes, it is. And he started asking me questions. Where do you fly? When did you arrive? On and on and on. After a while, I said, you know, I went through all the customs. And I did all the stuff. I'm not illegal or anything. What in the hell do you call me 3 in the morning? And I didn't tell him I was hungover. I said, why do you call me 3 in the morning? He said, well, we're attempting to make an absolute unconditional identification. Another A36, just like you, came in about an hour after you did, and they got in icing on final, and it killed them both. And that's the 2 Germans. And I'd said goodbye to them just that morning, and they bought the farm that night. So I didn't sleep the rest of that night very good either. So the next day we took off and we flew down through Scotland and England, and we stayed in Jersey Island, which is, Jersey Island is high in, or you have to have a certain amount of money to even hope to live there. And it's very small. That's where the Jersey cows came from. And there's Guernsey Island, there's Guernsey cows there. But anyway, we stayed there. My wife and I. Oh, and my wife had flown over with another gal on a jet, and we met them there. And so anyway, I thought, oh man, Jackie, that's my wife's name. She's gonna just hug me and kiss me and just all over me because she probably thinks that thought that I was dead, because it was an A36 with 2 aboard, and that's all she knew. And so when I got out of the plane, she didn't run over to me. She come walking over. Hi, honey, was that a good flight? And I was hurt. I thought, damn, you don't give a shit about that. And I said, well, did you hear about these the other Bonanzas that went down? And she said, yeah. And I said, well, didn't you think it was probably me? And she said, no, I didn't. My wife thought I could fly through a mountain and not her. She had, one time we were in a snowstorm up in Colorado, and I mean a snowstorm. It was a blizzard, and I sweat dripping on my elbow, so I was so scared. No, it wasn't an instrument rated at this time. And I said, if this don't stop in the next 10 minutes, we'll turn around and go. Boy, I flew over a town called Eagle, Colorado. And I said, if I'm not out of this, and had told her to write it down the whole bit. But prior to this, I'm flying, and I'm just scared to death. I really am. I look over, and she's reading the Reader's Digest. She just never got excited about anything. She thought I could, and I wasn't an instrument pilot at that time. So anyway, then we landed at Jersey Island, and we stayed with a mortician. And he had to take Jackie and I down and show us his work. And Jackie said, oh, I don't want to go in there. And well, I said, come on. We're staying at their house, and they're so nice to us. So anyway, we'd go by a cadaver, and he'd say, I want you to look at the job I did here. They had doilies over their faces. He'd take it off, and Jackie, with that, she just turned around and left. So anyway, now I'm in Jersey Island. We were there for 2 or 3 days, and then we had to fly into Munich. And there was a convention, a Rotary International Convention. This year it's in Singapore. Every year it's in a different place. And I many times during the 80s, Jackie and I would go wherever it was in the world, no matter where. So I've been to Buenos Aires and all over. Anyway, this was Munich. So we flew out into Munich, kind of as a group. And we had a real tailwind too. And they called it, and it wasn't too far north of Paris. And they called and says, what kind of planes are those? And then we were all going a lot faster than we should have been. We didn't tell them what it was. And they said, well, you're registering about 240 miles an hour. But anyway, we got into to the convention. We were there for 3 days, or 4 days, whatever it was, and we do the things you do at convention. And then we started off going, let's see, from there I went over the Matterhorn and the Alps. I went into Florence, Italy. I had no oxygen because my tanks were inches and their stuff is metric fittings, so they couldn't give me any. So anyway, I was watching my fingernails. Everybody went to sleep. I was up at 15,000, but I wasn't there that long. And then I settled down and we landed at Florence, Italy. Have you ever been there, any of you? Well, we've been there. There's where the big statue of David, naked, with his, and it's good luck if you walk and rub his big toe, because it's about here. But you look up at it, naked and jaybird. It's nothing but a art of man. And it's a very interesting place. This is when my friend Jeff, you know, when you're in somebody else's country, you don't want to be an ugly American. Well, Jeff was very hot-tempered, and it happened several times. This time we was in a real nice restaurant. The place was full, and he always liked them. And his wife was there, and they always liked to drink wine with ice cubes in it. Well, they don't have ice over there in those days. Now I'm sure they do today. But ice was a premium. So anyway, he said, he got our drinks. And of course, I'm a beer drinker, so I'm easy. And they ordered their white wine with ice in it. The guy brought it and gave it to him. No ice. Jack says, "I'd like to have some ice." And the guy says, "Oh yes, we and he goes, "You bet." But he kept going by our table and never bringing any ice. Very soon Jack said it again, "I want some ice." And he kept on going. Next time, "I want some ice." And, "Oh yes, sir." But he never would ever bring it. And he'd go into the kitchen and come out without ice. Jack said, "I want some ice! Damn it!" And we're Americans, ugly Americans. And the guy didn't get ice in, but only about 3 cubes, and brought them out. And that was one of Jack's things. And Florence, Italy is really quite a place to be. And we had a good time there. And we went from Florence to Venice. And Venice, of course, is an island without an airport. You land on the mainland, and then you take a boat over to Venice. And we stayed over there one night. Next day we came back. I didn't have enough gas to go to Rome. So I had to go the other way to Trieste, Italy, which is right next to Albania. In Yugoslavia, it's back up in the corner up there. And I got out of the plane while they were filling it. I walked over, and there was a fence there, and that was the office, poorest looking place I ever seen. And I've traveled 4 places. I've been in every airport in Mexico. But this was, I just thought, these people, no wonder they want to get out of here. So anyway, we took off, and I flew into Rome. I had 100-hour headwind. My plane flew 190, and I was doing 90. As smooth as you're sitting here. No bumps at all. You'd have never known it if you didn't read your instruments. We went into Rome, and Rome was, we went downtown Rome, and you couldn't understand them. The English were everywhere I have ever landed, all over the world, is good. But Rome, those guys just talk terrible. Well, anyway, I went and landed, and we rented a car, and we went to Naples, and we went to all over, 2 or 3 days, or 4 days there, I don't know how long we were there. And then we came back, and I tried to get my clearance, and this guy read it off to me, and it was so bad, I could never understand him. Finally, I said, "Why don't I just take off, and you tell me where to go once I get up there?" "That's the nicest, sir. That's the nicest. Shoot, take off." So anyway, we got out of there, flew across the Aegean Sea, I think it is, into Athens, Greece. And it's all ILS. Over there, every flight has to be, you can't fly like you just take off and fly. Here, you have to fill out your flight plan and everything. So anyway, I filled out my flight plan, and I was flying into Athens, Greece. We got about 60 miles out, and I thought I'll try and see if I can pick them up, or maybe it's 50. And I said, "This is 36 Romeo Foxtrot from Rome, Italy, and you're landing Athens." This guy come on hysterically. "Oh, you can't land here, you can't land here." I said, "Well, I'm in the system, you know I'm coming." On. "You can't land here, you can't land here." So anyway, I told me I couldn't land. So I went south and east just a little bit. Well, in a holding pattern out there, and I looked down, there's a big city down there. And I looked at my book, or my maps, and it was Corinth. The Corinthians in the Bible, I was circling over to Corinth. And so every little bit I'd call and say, "Can I come in?" "No, you can't land, you can't land. This is big airplanes. Come here, too busy." Well, they don't have one plane an hour come in. But anyway. So anyway, I kept calling every little bit. And 5 o'clock came. And that's when they changed people. A woman come on. And she says, "36 Romeo Foxtrot, what's your location?" I said, "I'm circling out here over Corinth." She gave me a heading, and she said, "Descending to 1,000 feet. And then I was out here and I hadn't landed that way, so she brought me here. And then when I got here, she turned and said, take a heading of whatever it was, 300 degrees probably, and cleared the lane just like that. From that point on, I had more and more and more respect for women. I love women. It happened several times, and men would be just cookie. You know, you'd get a woman on there and they'd handle it. I've had this with my TV, and also since I've been home. One day I tried. Mechanics were there for 45 minutes working. Couldn't get my TV to work. After they left, they had it working. And then it immediately quit working. So I called up whoever it was, and there was a woman on there. And she said, do this and do that and do this. So I said, ma'am, they've been working on it for 45 minutes. What you're going to do is going to get my TV to work. She said, well, let's just try it. So I did what she told me to. And in about 5 minutes, she had me, everything was fine. I told her, I said, boy, you women are the best. So anyway, now we're in Athens, Greece, and I wanted to go down to Casablanca, and so I could say that I flew into another continent, Africa. But I ran out of time. We just ran out of time. So we flew into, I did want to see Genoa, Italy, because that's where Columbus took off from when he founded America. And I wanted to see their harbor. And by the way, it's a beautiful harbor. Well, we landed there, and they treated us about like, I know we had, to be honest with you, we had a lot of trouble with Italy. And so we landed, we stayed overnight, and went to a nice restaurant, so on and so forth. And there was a sign up there on the wall that said, all in numbers, that's in the United States, all in numbers double the price. Well, Jack is now buying the gas. So we went out to the airplane, and I filled out all the stuff, and there, let's see, there's one other landing I made that I skipped. Coming back, before I got into Genoa, I stopped at a place called Brindisi, Italy, a World War II American bomber base. And that's where they flew out of there into Palessi. You remember have you heard the Palessi air raids? That's where all of Hitler's oil was. And they had every gun that Germans ever made there. And they went in there with, I don't know how many, it was like 300 airplanes to bomb the oil facilities. And about half of them didn't come back. It was terrible. And it was just a slaughter. And so anyway, at Brindisi, I gotta back up just a second. Before I ever left, I had all my stuff in a folder. And you have to have permits for everything and on and on. So anyway, I had all in your insurance. Well, I couldn't get my insurance. I didn't apply for it quick enough. They mailed the certificate that says I had insurance to my house. I said, oh, I can have it right now. And they said, all right, we'll give you this temporary. It's 30 days. Okay, now, I'm no good after 30 days. Most places you go in, they'd open that thing up and they'd turn to page 2 or 3, and they saw that everything was fine, and then they just, and out the door you went. Well, these damn Italians, this guy, first of all, I had to go clear across the runway walk, and it's a big field, and multiple strips. And I went over there and I showed him my stuff, and he just said, okay, and back out again. Well, hell, I had another half mile to walk back, and I was kind of tipped. So I went up, and it's on the second floor. Now this is in Brindisi, Italy, and there's this building that was up on the fixed base operation, and it wasn't the tower, but it was right by the tower. And here's a long counter, and then behind that there's another counter running along the windows. And there was two guys over there working, and this guy I had to go through here was facing me, and they were facing the other way. And so I got my stuff out. Now I knew I was not legal anymore, they think, but I really was. And the way they had treated us, I thought, oh gosh, I can't let him do it. It was on page, let's say 18. So he opens that thing up and he starts going, and he's studying every page, and he's just really reading everything. Or let's say he's on 15 now, and it's 18, and I'm in trouble. So, and by the way, Frank Sinatra, on every fence post, every telephone post, there's a sign of Frank Sinatra. He was on a cruise or a tour of Italy at that time. And I'll tell you, the Italians worshiped this man. I mean, worshiped him. He was more than anybody in Italy. Frank Sinatra was it. So anyway, guys, let's say he's on page 50. So I'm trying to think of something to say, and I said, I see that Frank Sinatra is going to have a tour here in Italy. And he said, yeah, he is. You know Frank Sinatra? I said, hell, everybody knows Frank Sinatra. I'm his dry cleaner. And I dry clean his clothes. I live in Palm Springs, California. Well, these guys that were over by the wall, working on that bench, looking out the window, they just spun around like they were running. And they come around, you know Frank Sinatra. And I said, oh yeah, like I knew him. He was the best friend. And he was a customer of mine. And I said, oh yeah, and I do Dolly. You know Dolly, his mother, I do her cleaning too. Yeah. Oh my gosh. So that guy, he's just, tell me about Frank Sinatra. So I told him some things about him. And then he said, bam, he closed it up and he says, you know, Frank Sinatra, you must be okay. Hell, I'd still be, we're terrible. So we flew out of there, ran easy, and I was glad to get out of there. And then we went over, and then Jack had to pay twice the price. So we're taxiing out at Genoa, Italy. We're taxiing out, and I went through all the paperwork. It took like 25, 30 minutes there every time I took off. So we get in the plane, we're flying out, we're taxiing out, and this pickup truck, some of the workers there, was driving by, and they waved at us, and Jack, give me a wave. And I said, Jack, don't do that, they're just working out. And he was madder than hell, and he had to pay twice the price, yeah. And he had a hair trigger. So anyway, got out the end of the runway, and they wouldn't let me go. And they kept saying, oh, hold it, we have stuff. Nobody was coming in or going. And so I sat there, and I'm talking 25, 30, 40 minutes. And finally they said, 36 Romeo Foxtrot, you'll have to taxi back in because your papers are not right. So I turned around and taxied all the way back in. I went through all those papers again. I told Jack, keep your damn hands in your pocket. And we taxied out that time, and they let me go. Then we went into Paris. That was, and I'll tell you, we were there 3 days. We had tule fog. You couldn't see nothing. And at this time, the girls then left on a jet to come home. And so it's back to just me and Jack. And every day every afternoon, we go over and have a beer at this bar. Well, there was these mechanics that were sitting there having a drink all the time too. And one mechanic always had a loaf of bread. And you know they buy their bread every day and everything. They don't have a refrigerator in those days. And he smelled and he was greasy and dirty. And he would take that bread, stick it up under his arm and go out. And every day he did this 3 days in a row. He'd take that bread, and I told Jack, I said, I'd never take a bite of that bread under his arm. Anyway, he told me where to land at La Bourget Airport. He told me where to park. And so I got out of the plane and walked around the wing. And there in the tarmac was a bronze plaque. And it said, this is the exact spot where Lindbergh's airplane came to a stop in 1927, and I didn't have enough sense to take a picture of it. Stupid me. And of course, we didn't take pictures in those days like we do now. But anyway, I went in, I got an oil change and got everything ready to come back. And the girls had gone. And we had to leave it, stay a couple extra days because of this fog. And then it cleared up and away we went. And I flew up to, I flew over Lake, Loch Ness in Ireland or in Scotland to see if Nessie was there. But I didn't see it, but I just say I flew over and looked for it. And then we went out to a place in the Outer Hebrides. This is the farthest land in Europe, or in England and Scotland. There's a little island out there, several islands. And well, these people all wear their Scottish. Each town has their own design too, so they know where you're from when you walk in. And we stayed there overnight. I wish I had stayed, taken a couple more days, but we were overdue now. Now, I'm going to fly 628 miles to Reykjavik, Iceland. The story gets interesting now. Weather said it was perfect. Clear flying all the way. So we took off. I know what time it was because after 5 o'clock, they doubled your landing fee. And if you took off after that, I took off, I wheeled up at 5:03 in the afternoon. And we took off. Beautiful. It put me at, and I believe it was at 9,000. That's where they put me. So anyway, I'm flying along and everything is beautiful. And after about 300 miles or 250 miles, I saw clouds up ahead. And I told Jack, they said there would be no weather at all. So we got closer and closer, and pretty soon, poof, we were into the clouds. Well, then the next thing is I looked out the window and I'm getting icy. And I've never been in ice before. All I knew is what they told me and I asked. But I had no icing equipment, no nothing. I started climbing right then. I was out of radio range to anybody because I was 305 miles back and 325 miles too. I couldn't reach anybody. I got up to 12,000 and I couldn't go any higher, and I was still in cloud. Now I was getting more and more ice as it building up. Pretty soon the windows, you couldn't see out. So you're sitting in a cocoon 12,000 feet above the North Atlantic, which is a miserable ocean. I mean, there's whitecaps all the time, and you don't know if it's freezing all the way down to the bottom or not. But I couldn't climb anymore, and then my speed started slowing down because I got ice on the prop and on the wings, and the aerodynamics had less lift and less thrust. And so I was calling different frequencies, trying to get somebody that someone might be able to tell me what to do. And I couldn't get anybody because it was way out there in the middle of hell and God. So all of a sudden, I had called Icelandic control. This voice came over I shouldn't hear him. And he's clear as I'm talking to you now. He said, 36 Romeo Foxtrot, this is Icelandic control, what can I do for you? Well, I told him what I just told you, and I'm just above stall, and in the meantime, and about 5 minutes prior to this, I turned to Jack, and I said, Jack, I'm sorry I asked you to come along, because we're toast. We're going to be dead in probably 10 minutes at the max. And, wait, Jack didn't know ex-Marine. He heard me like you, I'm afraid to die. I said, good for you. I had to listen, oh, my life, oh, Jack didn't give a damn. So anyway, the guy came on, and he said, and I told him my story real quick, and he said, okay, hang on, I'll get back with you in a minute. That was the world's longest minute. I never expected to ever hear him again. And in about a minute, he did come back on, and he says, 36 Romeo Foxtrot, this is Icelandic control. You're in an area of severe icing. I said, really? if you descend, you'll be all right. Said, go down to 6,000. So I said, out of 12 for 6. Well, I did something wrong again. I was told, I tried to do everything right, but when you put your gear down, you just pick up that much more ice. And I put full flaps, cut power, and started down. At 7,000 feet, I got in the damnedest rain you ever got. I mean, it was bad as fog. You couldn't see your wingtips. It rained that hard. But it washed all the ice off, and the windows cleared up. Oh, you can fly in the rain all hell. Half the time I was in Europe, I was in cloud because they have terrible, not down around the Mediterranean, but Germany and all that up there. It's just, you're flying IFR all the time. So anyway, I had no trouble with that. And I'm 300 miles out now. So, and I was at 6,000, I could see the hood or the cowling in the airplane anyway. And we didn't have ice anymore. So we flew on in, and I got about 50 miles out, and I called Icelandic control. He said, do you see the mountains? It's very volcanic. It's just a volcanic island is what it is. I said, I can't see my wingtips. And it's raining like heck out here. And he said, well, you're going to run into them at 6,000. And he gave me a vector. So I went around and then came on into, and now I've been through quite a bit by this time. And I was thinking, I got to make a ILS landing, and it's raining, and I can't even see my wingtips, you know. And I said, what is what's the weather like there where you're at? He said, 16 miles south of town, you'll fly out in the sunshine here. And just like he said, I had DNA on my plane. And it's 16 miles out of the rain. And it was raining so hard, and into sunshine, just like that. I went and landed, and nothing to it. Jack got out. I sat there for a minute and thinking about what I had been through and the past 3 hours. And I started kind of patting myself on the back. I said, you know, Wilmeth, you're the one damn good pilot. You kept your cool, you never got excited, you did what you was taught, and you came through. And you must be one hell of a pilot. So as I'm getting out, I stepped off the wing, my knees give out on me. I went in and I ordered 4 beers. I drank the first one down straight, and then I was so wrung out, I'll tell you. And the next day, we went and jacked him, and then we went to bed. And in Iceland, it's the nicest thing. The runway's here, and the parking is here, and the hotel is here, all walking distance. So anyway, we went to bed there at night, woke up the next morning, the sun was shining beautifully. I filled that tank up so all the way, I didn't even stop at Greenland. I just overflew I could fly forever. I flew straight on into America, nonstop. And we landed at Frobisher Bay on Baffin Island. And then I landed at Churchill, Manitoba, Canada. That's the polar bear capital of the world. Another interesting thing. Everywhere we landed, something interesting happened. Not always good, but there was polar bears all over. And they had a dump. The city dump was out south of town. There must have been 50 polar bears out there digging through the garbage. And anyway, we stayed overnight there, and then I flew home. And that's my story. Oh, I flew 121 hours. I spent $36,000, which today would be $100,000.
Wow.
And easy, maybe even more. It was the most wonderful thing I've ever done in my life, though. And it gets bigger every year that I get older, that I actually did it and lived through it. And that's my story.
Wow.